Last September, my friends and I decided to go for a night drive. We were bored and wanted an adventure. It was a cold, clear night, and the moonlight made the empty roads look mysterious. There were 4 of us in the car: me, Alex, Sam, and Jenny. We drove aimlessly, laughing and playing music, but soon the conversation turned to ghost stories. Someone mentioned an old abandoned house at the edge of town. "We should go there," Sam suggested with a grin. The idea was thrilling and scary at the same time. We all agreed, and Alex, who was driving, turned the car in the direction of the house. The roads became narrower and bumpier as we got closer. Tall trees lined the path, their branches looking like twisted fingers in the moonlight. Finally, we saw it, the old abandoned house. It stood at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by overgrown bushes and tall grass. The house was large, with broken windows and a sagging roof. It looked like it had been empty for years. The car's headlights cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the house look even scarier. We parked the car a little way down the road, not wanting to draw attention to ourselves. As we walked toward the house, the air felt colder, and I could hear the sound of our footsteps crunching on the gravel. My heart was beating fast, and I could tell my friends were nervous too. We reached the front door, which was hanging off its hinges. Alex pushed it open with a creak, and we stepped inside. The air inside was musty and stale. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting long shadows on the dusty floor. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. We split up to explore. Jenny and I went upstairs while Alex and Sam stayed on the ground floor. The stairs groaned under our weight, and each step echoed through the empty house. Upstairs, we found old furniture covered in white sheets, broken picture frames, and cobwebs in every corner. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jenny and I moved from room to room, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. In one of the rooms, I found an old diary on a dusty table. I picked it up and opened it, but the pages were too faded to read. Suddenly, we heard a loud crash from downstairs. My heart jumped into my throat. "Alex? Sam?" Jenny called out, but there was no answer. We hurried back down the stairs. The living room was empty, but the front door was now closed. We hadn't heard it shut. A sense of dread washed over me. Something wasn't right. "Let's find them and get out of here," I said, my voice shaking. We moved through the house, checking each room. The kitchen was empty, and so was the dining room. As we entered the last room, a small storage space at the back of the house, we found Alex and Sam. They were standing still, staring at something on the floor. I followed their gaze and saw what they were looking at. A trapdoor. "Did you open it?" I asked. Sam shook his head. It was already open when we got here. A cold draft came up from the trapdoor, sending shivers down my spine. Darkness below seemed to swallow the light from our flashlights. Against my better judgment, we decided to go down. The narrow wooden ladder creaked as we descended into the basement. The basement was damp and cold. The walls were lined with shelves full of dusty jars and old tools. In the corner, there was a small flickering light. We cautiously approached it and found an old lantern hanging from a nail in the wall. It cast a dim glow, barely illuminating the room. Suddenly, we heard footsteps above us. Someone else was in the house. My heart pounded in my chest. We turned off our flashlights and stood still, listening. The footsteps grew louder, coming closer to the trapdoor. We held our breath, hoping whoever it was would leave, but the footsteps stopped right above us. Then, slowly, the trapdoor began to creak open. A figure appeared at the top of the ladder, silhouetted against the dim light from the living room. It was a man, tall and thin, with wild hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. He climbed down the ladder and we backed away, trying to stay out of his sight. The man moved slowly, methodically, as if he was searching for something. He muttered to himself words we couldn't understand. I could feel my friends trembling beside me. We needed to get out of there, but the only way was past the man. Suddenly, the man stopped and turned his head, looking directly at us. His eyes locked onto mine, and a cold smile spread across his face. He started walking toward us, and panic set in. We bolted for the ladder, scrambling up as fast as we could. Alex went first, followed by Jenny, then me, and finally Sam. As we reached the top, the man grabbed Sam's ankle, pulling him back down. Sam kicked and struggled, and we all grabbed him, pulling him with all our strength. Sam managed to break free, and we slammed the trapdoor shut, locking it with a rusty bolt. We didn't stop to catch our breath. We ran out of the house, through the front door and back to the car. We jumped in and Alex started the engine. The tires screeched as we sped away, not looking back. As we drove away, the house disappeared into the darkness behind us. We didn't speak, too shaken by what had just happened. The thrill of the night drive had turned into a nightmare. We had found our adventure, but it was one we would never want to repeat. From that night on, we never spoke of the abandoned house again. The memory of the man and his eerie smile haunted me for weeks. Even now, when I drive past the edge of town, I feel a chill and speed up, not wanting to be reminded of that terrifying night. I was working the graveyard shift at the gas station. The night was quiet, and I was halfway through my shift. The store was empty except for the hum of the refrigerators and the soft buzz of the overhead lights. I was stocking some shelves when I heard the chime of the door. A woman entered, holding a young boy's hand. They both looked scared. The woman's clothes were torn, and her face was streaked with tears. The boy clung to her side, his eyes wide with fear. She approached the counter, her voice shaky. "Can I use your phone?" she asked. I nodded and handed her the store phone. As she dialed, I noticed her hands trembling. The boy stayed close to her, looking around nervously. I couldn't imagine what they had been through. The woman spoke softly into the phone, her words rushed and urgent. I tried not to eavesdrop, but couldn't help catching fragments of her conversation. She was trying to reach someone for help. After the call, she asked if they could stay in the store for a while. I could see she was desperate. "Of course," I said. "You can stay as long as you need." I offered them some free drinks and snacks. The woman's face softened a bit, and she thanked me. They sat in a corner, the boy munching on a candy bar while the woman sipped a bottle of water. I kept an eye on them, making sure they felt safe. The night dragged on, and the unease in my stomach grew. I didn't know what had happened to them, but it was clear they were running from something or someone. An hour passed. The door chimed again, this time more aggressively. A man stormed in, his face twisted with anger. "There you are," he shouted, making a beeline for the woman and the boy. The woman shrank back, pulling the boy closer. "Sir, you need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I stepped between him and the woman. "Get out of my way," he roared. "She's coming with me." He tried to push past me, but I held my ground. The woman was crying now, clutching her son protectively. "Sir, I'm calling the police," I warned. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the phone. The man's eyes flashed with rage, and he lunged at me, knocking the phone out of my hand. It clattered to the floor, but I managed to grab it and dial 911. "Help! We need police at the gas station on Elm Street," I shouted into the phone. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way. but it felt like an eternity before I heard the sirens. The man continued to shout, trying to drag the woman out of the store. I stood in his way, hoping to buy time. The boy was crying now, his face buried in his mother's side. Finally, the police arrived. 2 officers burst through the door, guns drawn. "Step away from them," one officer commanded. The man hesitated, then raised his hands, his face still contorted with anger. The officers moved quickly, handcuffing him and escorting him out to the squad car. The woman collapsed onto a chair, sobbing with relief. The boy held on to her, still frightened but visibly relieved that the man was gone. One of the officers stayed behind to talk to the woman. She explained that the man was her boyfriend and had been abusive. She had finally managed to escape with her son, seeking refuge in the gas station. The officer assured her that she was safe now and that they would help her find a place to stay. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The situation had been terrifying, but I was glad I could help. The woman thanked me repeatedly, tears of gratitude in her eyes. I told her it was no problem, just glad she and her son were safe. The police took the man away, and the officer stayed with the woman until a social worker arrived. They arranged for her and her son to stay at a safe house for the night. As they left, the woman turned to me one last time. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I nodded, watching as they walked out into the night, finally safe from harm. The store was quiet again. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of the lights. But the night felt different now. I had faced something terrifying and helped someone in need. The graveyard shift had never felt so important. As the hours passed and the morning light began to filter through the windows, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman and her son. I hoped they would find peace and safety in their new life, and I hoped that in some small way, I had made a difference. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the strength it takes to stand up to fear and the power of kindness in the face of darkness. My name is Watson, and I live in a small, quiet town where everyone knows each other. I enjoy hosting dinner parties at my house, bringing friends together for good food and conversation. It was a warm summer evening when I decided to host another dinner party, inviting my closest friends. I had no idea that this night would turn into a mystery that still haunts me. I spent the entire day preparing for the party. The table was set with my best dishes, and the house smelled of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow through the windows as my friends started to arrive. Sarah, Mark, Lisa, and John were all there, along with a new friend, Tom, who had recently moved to town. Tom was a bit of a mystery. He was quiet and reserved, but I thought it would be nice to include him in our group. He seemed happy to be invited, and I hoped he would enjoy the evening with us. We all gathered around the table, laughing and sharing stories as we ate. The dinner went smoothly, with everyone enjoying the food and each other's company. After dessert, we moved to the living room to continue our conversations. Tom was unusually quiet, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe he was just shy, or perhaps he didn't feel comfortable yet. As the evening progressed, Tom's mood seemed to shift. He became tense and irritable, barely speaking and avoiding eye contact. I noticed but didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable by asking in front of everyone. Eventually, he stood up abruptly, muttering something about needing to leave. Before I could say anything, he was out the door, slamming it behind him. We all sat in stunned silence, unsure of what had just happened. After a few moments, we tried to brush it off and continued the evening, though the mood had shifted. The night eventually came to an end, and my friends said their goodbyes, still puzzled by Tom's sudden departure. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to check on Tom, hoping to find out what had upset him. I went to his house, but there was no answer when I knocked. His car was in the driveway, but it seemed as if no one was home. I left, thinking he might just need some space. A few days passed, and I still hadn't heard from Tom. I reached out to my friends, but no one had seen or heard from him either. Concerned, I decided to call the police and report him missing. They took my statement and assured me they would look into it. Weeks turned into months, and there was still no sign of Tom. The police had searched his house, talked to neighbors, and followed every lead, but it was as if he had vanished into thin air. My friends and I were left with more questions than answers. One evening, I found myself going through the events of that night over and over in my mind. What had caused Tom to leave so suddenly? I couldn't help but feel responsible, wondering if I had missed some sign or if there was something I could have done to prevent it. Determined to find some answers, I started looking into Tom's past. I learned that he had moved to our town after a difficult breakup and was looking for a fresh start. He didn't have many friends, and his family lived far away. The more I learned, the more I realized how little I knew about him. One night, while I was alone in my house, I heard a noise outside. It was a faint rustling, like someone was moving through the bushes. My heart raced as I peered out the window, but I couldn't see anything in the darkness. The noise stopped, and I tried to convince myself it was just an animal. The following nights, the noises continued. Footsteps, whispers, and the feeling of being watched. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was out there. My sleep was disturbed, and I felt on edge all the time. One evening, I found an old journal in Tom's house that the police had overlooked. It was filled with his thoughts and feelings, revealing a troubled mind. He wrote about feeling out of place, not just in our town but in life. The entries grew darker, filled with paranoia and fear. The last entry was dated the night of the dinner party. It read, "I can't escape it. It's always watching, always waiting. I need to leave before it's too late." Reading those words sent a chill down my spine. What had Tom been so afraid of? I shared the journal with the police, but it didn't provide any concrete answers. They continued their investigation, but the trail had gone cold. As time passed, the memory of that night faded for everyone except me. I couldn't let it go, haunted by the unknown. I often found myself staring out into the darkness, listening for those faint noises, wondering if Tom was out there somewhere, lost and scared. My friends tried to comfort me, but the mystery remained unsolved. Tom was gone, and we might never know what happened to him. The dinner party that had ended happily for the rest of us had left a shadow over my life, a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary moments can turn into the most inexplicable mysteries. In the quiet moments when I'm alone with my thoughts, I still think of Tom and that fateful night. The unanswered questions linger, a ghost that refuses to be laid to rest. And so, I continue to search for answers, hoping that one day the mystery will be solved and Tom's story will finally have an ending. My name is John, and I enjoy taking my family on little adventures. We live in the city, so sometimes we like to escape to the countryside. One summer, I rented an old farmhouse on Airbnb. It looked perfect. A big yard, old charm, and even a pool. It was a great spot to relax and unwind for a weekend. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon. My wife, Julian, and our two kids, Liam and Zoe, were excited. The farmhouse stood at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by trees. It had a wide porch with creaky wooden steps, and the inside was full of antique furniture and old pictures. Felt like stepping back in time. After unpacking, we decided to spend the evening by the pool. The kids splashed around while Julian and I sat on the edge, dipping our feet in the cool water. The air was fresh, and the only sounds were the kids' laughter and the gentle rustling of leaves. As night fell, we set up some lights around the pool and had dinner outside. The stars were bright, and everything seemed perfect. But then, I heard it, a crunching sound, like someone walking on dry leaves. I looked around, but it was dark beyond the reach of our lights. Julian noticed my concern. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "I'm sure it's just an animal," she replied, trying to sound calm. But the sounds continued, and they seemed to be getting closer. I told the kids to get out of the pool and go inside. We gathered our things quickly, and I locked the door behind us. Inside, the house felt safe, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I checked all the windows and doors, making sure they were locked. Julian and I put the kids to bed, and I kept a flashlight and my phone nearby. Hours passed, and the house was quiet. Just as I started to relax, there was a loud knock at the door. My heart jumped. I grabbed the flashlight and looked through the peephole. A man stood outside, wearing a police uniform. "Open up, it's the police," he called out. I hesitated. Why would the police be here at this hour? I decided to call out through the door. "Why are you here?" I asked. "There's been a report of suspicious activity. Please open the door," he replied. Something didn't feel right. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. I decided to call the local police station to verify. As I dialed, the man outside knocked again, harder this time. "Open the door now," he shouted. The dispatcher at the police station answered, and I quickly explained the situation. They said they hadn't sent anyone to our location and advised me to stay inside and lock everything. They were sending real officers to our address. Fear gripped me. I told Julian to take the kids and hide in one of the bedrooms. I could hear the man outside trying the door handle. I went to the living room and turned off all the lights, peeking through the curtains. More figures were moving around outside. Minutes felt like hours as we waited. The knocking continued, and the man kept claiming to be the police, demanding we open the door. I knew he wasn't telling the truth. My phone buzzed. The real police were almost there. Suddenly, the fake officer started banging on the windows, trying to find a way in. I held my breath, hoping they wouldn't break the glass. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of a police car coming down the long driveway. The figures outside scattered into the woods. The real police officers arrived and checked the area, but they found no sign of the imposters. They assured us we were safe, but suggested we find another place to stay for the night. They said it wasn't common, but sometimes people posed as officers to gain entry to homes. Their intentions were unknown, but it was clear they meant no good. We packed our bags and left the farmhouse, heading to a nearby hotel. The kids were scared but safe. Julian and I were shaken but relieved. As we drove away, I couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened if we had opened the door. It was a frightening experience that reminded me to always trust my instincts and verify before letting anyone in. We never found out who the fake police were or what they wanted, but we were thankful for the real officers who arrived just in time. That night changed the way I think about safety, and I'm more cautious now, especially when renting places in unfamiliar areas. Our little adventure turned into a night of terror, but we were lucky to come out of it unharmed. It was a lesson learned, and from then on, I made sure to always double-check everything and stay alert, no matter how safe a place seemed.